Welcome to Negative Art Productions. My name is Stefan. You might be here because of my shorts, you might be here because of my last video, and I said that I would follow up and tell another story. So if you're here and you have subscribed, thank you. You could subscribe to get more ghost stories, and I want to do it on a consistent basis. You'll see it every week. And I'll post a short to remind people that I'm doing it, changing up my channel. But enough about me, let's get to it. I'm going to tell you my favorite kind of story. A ghost story. In the first story, just to recap, it was called The Guy. And basically, I had seen for the very first time this spirit that was prevalent in my neighborhood, in my house growing up, in my childhood through teenage years when I lived there. And I saw it, and I want to go a little bit more in depth. If you want to hear more about the first story, please go back, watch the video. I'm going to try and keep these as concise as possible, but I also don't want to rush through it. I'm going to tell you a few things. One, the origin of how he got his super creative name as The Guy. And two, some more details about what I saw and what I experienced as well. It's the third thing, something I left out on purpose. So first of all, he, and I know it sounds weird, but when you see certain energies, entities, spirits, whatever you want to call it, they can have gender-specific presence, which is crazy, but it's true. From how they look, the sense of intimidation that they may want to present is commonly associated with males because of all of our awesome, fun testosterone. Sorry. I'm not going to get into any of that. Don't worry. This isn't a gender studies podcast. I try to be as open as possible and not exclude anyone. But I'm not the expert. That's not where this is going. Anyway, we called it The Guy. Called him the ghost guy, the ghost, the spirit. We never wanted to associate it with what happened growing up, and I want to add some backstory. In the house next door, if you're looking from the house, it would be pointing west. And it was a very nice old lady that lived there. She was basically like my grandmother. But when I was very young, her husband took his life. And he did not like our family. She was very sweet, but he was something different. So I never wanted to associate it and call him the guy by name, but we think that's what it could have been. Not going to pinpoint that, and that's not for me to decide because I don't really know. I'm not an expert on any of this. This is just from what I've experienced, which is quite a lot, and I want to continue to tell these stories because it's something that I've been a little ashamed of. You know, you kind of feel like a weirdo bringing it up randomly. So I want to start telling these stories. I've told them to my family and friends have been a part of some of these stories. But that's what I wanted to do here. So he got his name just from popping up, and whether it was my neighbor or not, which wouldn't make sense because the timeline was like 10 years apart. So why would the energy just start manifesting itself 10 years later? That never really made sense because it was too far removed. But yeah, we started seeing him consistently, mostly around me, which is weird, almost like I was the compass or barometer for it, whatever you'd want to say, and not like I would summon it. I tried to do that. That'll be a story for another night. Anyway, so I had started seeing him a lot. I'll tell these stories, but it had been seen so many times by so many different people, they would refer to it as the guy. It just stuck. You would say, hey, the guy, you would know what you're talking about amongst my friend group and my family. So that's one. Two, I'd like to give a more detailed description of the first time I saw him. Call back to the first story. Again, if you haven't listened to it, it's the first time. So if you want to kind of follow along chronologically, as I am going to tell the stories chronologically, there you go. You can go back to the first one. But in the story, I do describe it as kind of billowy smoke, but not like flowing, slow, epic smoke. It was more like non-defined features. So they appeared, but that's because it was using as much energy as it could to show itself. I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert, but that's the way I can describe it, is that it was not quite see-through, but not quite solid. And right away, the scariest part is that all of it came from the shadows. If I find the video, I'll link it and I'll show it right now. But the way my parents' house was set up was kind of on, like, everything was an L. So the roads leading, which is very common in the suburbs, and that's where I grew up, in the suburbs of White Bear Lake. The story of White Bear Lake is also really cool. A lot of indigenous people that we, of course, totally got screwed over. And I'm not going to get into that either, but that's what happened. So there's a lot of that activity going on as well, which is horrible mistreatment of that situation of the people, of the land, just kind of taking it, not really respecting it for anything, people or the land. So I think that also has to do with it, because it just feels like everything's kind of shaken up. And to give you an idea, we were so close to the actual... Sorry about that. I should turn this down. All right. Sorry about that. Rookie mistake. So to give you some clarity, we were so close to the lake that we could walk every day. So I feel a lot of angry energy in their neighborhood. Everything's kind of L-shaped. So the streets run parallel, and then you go down, and there's always these L turns and curves, and it got referred to as the corner because that is the first place we saw the guy. And it's the suburbs, so once it gets dark, it's very dark other than the street lights coming down. But besides that, it's very, very dark in areas, almost like the country, but it's suburban, really close to the rural area. And I know if this is sounding like I'm getting too deep into the weeds, get it? Rural. It's because I want to set up the image in your head so you can see what I'm seeing. So very lots of vegetation, really deep woods, but you're in the suburbs, so you could walk through about a half acre and you're in someone else's yard, close to farmland. There's so many stories just going through my head, but I'm still just trying to paint you a picture of where we are. So it's one street light on the edge, on the corner where it does the L. And then, as I said in the first episode, right by the railroad tracks, which is a whole other energy in and of itself. Very strange, living next to the railroad tracks and in those woods. So we're on the corner. It's the L shape. This is a W. It's an L shape. So that's where we'd go around the corner to, like I said, go cause mischief and mayhem. And so our house is near the top of the street. Go down like 10 houses around the corner, and that's where you can start crossing the railroad tracks to get to certain people if we, were in a vengeful teenage mood. But in that corner is the first time where all this started happening, all the weird energy. So when I saw the guy for the first time, it's almost like everything was being created from dark shadows into the light from the street lamp coming down on the corner. So it started as all a dark shadow, semi-translucent, kind of wavy, and the black eyes started, and then the black mouth, and then started about 15 feet away from him, and he's walking up to me as I had just done, low-grade toilet papering vandalism to someone's house. So I'm terrified, and the more I look, the more human form it starts taking, and then it looked like a man. The weirdest thing is, I want to say glowing, like you imagine a classic ghost, but not. It was like anytime we would see him, a spotlight was shining down on him, so completely washed out. That was the weirdest part, is that there was no variation of shadows. It was kind of that glowing silhouette that was so intense, and you could just feel it. It was like turning your guitar amp up to 11 and putting on the heaviest distortion possible with a lot of bass. You could feel it. Just terrifying. If it was a person that I saw, normal person, yeah, I'd be spooked. But I wouldn't be so damn terrified, and it gave me that feeling. So that was the second thing I wanted to cover. And then the third is what I left out. So if it looks different, that's because my camera shut off, and not in a spooky way, in me being an idiot way and not clearing the memory card. But what I was going to tell you, it was actually perfect timing because it was my third thing I was going to discuss. And that's that I left something out of the last story. At the end of the last story, me and my brother are back in his room and we're recapping. But what actually happened next sounds like total bullshit. But I swear this is exactly what happened. If this was written, it would sound rehearsed. It would seem rehearsed. I'm a great actor. I mean, I know these things. I'm not looking at a screen behind reading words or over here. This is all me retelling the story. So I swear I would not bring you here watching this video if this is all made up. Because if it was made up, it would be much better than this. This is all retellings. I just wanted to make that clear. The next day, I got a phone call. And it's from my good friend who had just recently moved closer to me in the rural area farther north. Northern Minnesotan woods have an energy, even not that far north. So that might have something to do with it. But he calls me. Also, before I get into that, there are stories that I will tell about the house and the area he moved into, which are for another complete different series of stories, but they're terrifying. We'll get into that later. So he calls me. He's like, hey. Oh, hey, man, what's up? This is going to sound weird. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Did you see a guy last night that freaked you out? Like a ghost guy, like this thing around your corner? I was silent. How did he know exactly what happened? There was no social media. I mean, there was kind of, not in '03, not like it is today where you're on your cell phone, you can boom, post it like that. I'd have to log onto a computer, but that was super late at night, so I wouldn't have done that. He had no way of knowing. I didn't call him. This is before I had texting. Yes, people in 2003 did have texting. I did not. So he had no way of knowing. I'm shocked. And I don't remember the conversation after that. But there are many more stories that took place in that area. Talking to people in the neighborhood. I'd like to have my family and friends interviewed about this. I think it'd be super fun. But thank you for coming and watching and listening to another ghost story. It's been super fun. I will put out a new video every week. Please subscribe, like, and if you comment about questions that anything I missed, or you'd like me to talk about more in my next videos, greatly appreciate it. Thanks for stopping on by, and have a spooky night.